You turn my mourning into dancing. Your love changes everything. There's something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes every. You turn my mourning into dancing. 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 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my mourning into dancing. You turn my mourning into dancing. You turn my mourning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love, something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. You turn my mourning into dancing. 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 Something about your love, something about your love changes everything.
Good morning, rooted men. It's a cold. It's kind of like January out there. It's so cold. Oh, I'm super excited. Where today we'll be going back to the hospital again. So pray for me that I can get through this. It's not an easy place to go to. We've been spending all of our time up in the cardiac ward and with Diane's dad, and the amount of people up there that struggle with reality, that struggle with memory loss and stuff like that. It's painful. It's hard to see, and it's hard to watch, and hard to be a part of. I pray that this never happens to me, but we know we don't get any say in all that. So, on a lighter note, man, we got a good crowd. I'm sitting there watching all these names popped up, and I'm like, holy crap. Yay. I want to thank my firmly rooted family for all the support I've gotten over the last few days as a church. I couldn't believe the offers of help and all the love and care that I've been, my wife and I have been getting. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. People wonder about churches sometimes, and they think they're hypocritical in judgment, and then you find a place that just loves you, and that to me is the most important thing. This morning, let's go see who that. Let's see who's on it first, because I know the line is long. I'm like, I feel like a rock star. We got Chuck B here this morning and Ken Gooch. Good morning, fellow brothers in arms. Perfect name for it. Good morning from the event from Pastor Tom. Eric's here. I love that it's not all 80-year-olds on here, and it's not all 20-year-olds on here. You got me, and then you got Eric. I mean, then you got Tom, and you got Ken in the middle, and Brian Fleming. Here's another 20-year-old guy, and Chris Conley, and Shane. Look at that. All right. Oh, and I almost messed up. And Bert Reggiani. Bert's a regular. We know you almost can say his name without looking for it, the comment. And then Chuck is praying for your family, Bert. How awesome is that? That's what families do, I guess. All right, so let me get rid of that. Today we're talking about Philippians and Philippians 3, verses 1 through 7. This is good stuff. This is good stuff in this one. God is changing Paul. He just, to me, in this book, he seems so happy. The other books, he seems like he's correcting and scolding, but this one, he just seems like he's excited to talk to them, which hopefully every pastor should be that way. Oh, wait, there's one more. I'm not sure who that is, but I'm glad you're here too. All right, back to it. Back to work. Ready? So let me pull up the verses. I got them already ready to go, so it shouldn't take but a second. There we go. So it starts out right at verse 1. It says, "Finally, my brothers, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you is no trouble to me and is safe for you." I kind of got caught on that safe word for a second when I was looking through it, but I think he kind of answers it in a couple paragraphs. He says, "Look out for the dogs. Look out for the evildoers. Look out for those who mutilate the flesh." I'm thinking, what on earth? The dogs. What is he talking about? I think this is a metaphor. I think he's talking about the false teachers who are aggressive, maybe a little corrupt, maybe kind of like a pack hunter where they feed on the unsuspecting, or maybe people that are not quite capable of discerning. Then he talks about the false teachers. And we know at this point he's been struggling with the Judaizers, and it's pretty clear. I'm pretty sure this is what he's talking about. But then he talks about those who mutilate the flesh. And that one kind of stopped me for a second, because I think he talking about piercings and tattoos. No. He says, for we are the circumcision. I love that. But the mutilated the flesh, and it threw me for a loop. I stopped, because I'm thinking, what on earth is that? Right? Well, then I looked at a couple different translations, and one said concision, and the other said false circumcision. I think he's saying is, beware of those that tell you you have to be circumcised to have the glory of God. Those that the circumcision is the only is necessary ingredient to salvation. And Paul's trying to tell you that. I love the way the translators work. Sometimes it's like you got three different words, three different descriptions of what they're saying, and I'm like, so then you got to look at them all a little bit, kind of, and go back to the Greek word, and the Greek word means to cut off. So it kind of the concision part, which is kind of weird. So I think that's where we stumble, and I think that's why it causes people to question. Translations sometimes are tricky, right? So then he goes, for we are the circumcision who worship by the Spirit of God and the glory in Christ Jesus, and put no confidence in the flesh. Well, now I think we understand what he's talking about in verse 1 by saying it's safe for you. Because the law and the circumcision, he's trying to tell you, are part of the law, part of then you guys are the ones that worship in the Spirit of God, and they don't have to put their confidence in the flesh. You don't. Your salvation has got to do with Christ, his sacrifice, his love. So in verse 1, when he says safe, I think that's where he's referring to. But because our faith is in Jesus, not our obedience. Even though Paul was circumcised, he had no confidence. His confidence was in Jesus. And I think he'll talk about this in the next 3 verses. He says, though I myself have no reason for confidence in the flesh. I have no confidence in the flesh also. If anyone else thinks he has a reason for confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the month, 8th day, of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. Paul is listing off all his accomplishments. He's listing off all the criteria of the flesh that he has no question in his Jewishness and his adherence to the law. He's like a Pharisee who the same ones that decided that Jesus needed to die because he told them their obedience to the law wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. That he's like a Pharisee that Jesus said, you're all whitewashed tombs. Or how you travel the corners of the earth to find one convert, and then you make him more evil than yourself. I love how these verses all tie together. He met every need for the righteousness by the law. Every need. He didn't need Jesus according to Jewish law. He himself understood it wasn't enough. If you look at his accomplishments, he gave up everything. I mean, compared to the Pharisees that put him to death, he was, he was right there with them. He was right there at the top. He would soon be one of the more popular Pharisees, or more powerful, maybe is the better word, Pharisees in ancient Israel. Yet he knew to himself, he knew that it wasn't enough. All right, so then we go back. Where do we go? But wherever I gain, okay. Under the law, blameless. But whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. We've all heard this verse before. We've heard it in sermons. We've heard it in memes. We've heard it in just everyday life. I mean, this is one of the most often repeated verses that we find. Paul had received quite a high position in the Jewish faith. His human accomplishment had no value, and he considered them a loss compared to knowing Christ. Paul's encounter with Jesus not only changed him, but it changed everything. It changed everything he believed. He himself. Let me back out of this real quick. He was a different person, just like Abram became Abraham, just like a shepherd boy named David became a king. Not the way things are normally done. Paul's encounter with Jesus on that road to Damascus was the single most important thing that ever happened in his life. Left blind for 3 days without hope. Let's face it, they didn't have doctors. They didn't have eye specialists. They had people. They had prophets. They had people that ministered the word. My hope is, from all this that we learn today, is that we see that Jesus is capable of changing a person. And if you look at yourself today, and I do this a lot, and you look at yourself today, and are you the same person you were when you were 20? Or obviously, if you're 20, then that would be silly. But if you get what I'm saying, though, since you've met Christ, since you've seen his work and you've heard his message, our life should look different. We should be different. We should act different. We should love different. Everything should be different. It's part of who we are. I don't want to stretch us out and just talk about being different forever, but are we allowing Christ to change us, change our name, change our lives? And I think that's the place where the mirror needs to be. That's where, when we get up in the morning, we need to look in the mirror and say, am I still Steve? Am I still Steve? Or am I somebody different? Sometimes I'm still Steve. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I catch myself in the middle of anger or doubt or fear. And it's nice to have something to grab onto and cling to that'll bring me back and hold me back down on the ground. That's what I have for you today, boys. I hope it was a blessing to you. I look forward to doing these. And I don't see that anybody else came on. So I pray this was a blessing to you. And if I can find my media asset, when they updated this, they changed some of the names. And it's like, now I have to think about it when I move. Have a firm day today, gentlemen. And may someone see Jesus in you today. Peace.